Greetings from beautiful Funk Studios in Fargo, North Dakota, deep within the depths of the Supercharger dead zone. This is a very special edition Tesla News and Topics podcast for Saturday, September 29th, 2018.
All right, I think we've got quite a lot of good news to talk about, and look forward to sharing that with you.
Wow. Welcome, everyone, to this very special show. The big news, of course, of those of you who may follow the show on Twitter, is that I did get my Model 3. I went to Eden Prairie and picked it up, and I did record some clips and I'm going to give you sort of a taste of what that day was like. I recorded really everything except for the actual delivery moment so that I could just enjoy it and not have to worry about asking them if they minded I recorded and that sort of thing. But it was a great day, great drive home, really interesting stuff to share with you at the end of the show. And that'll be the topic, was basically delivery day. So we got a lot of news to cover. This actually just broke today. I'm recording the show now Saturday night at about 8 p.m. And Elon Musk was being sued by the SEC. And originally it sounded like there was a deal in place where he was going to have to leave Tesla altogether. But it sounds like that deal collapsed and then they renegotiated it. Anyway, they ended up settling this case with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And Elon will have to personally pay a very hefty fine of $20 million. He, as most of you know, is Tesla's chief executive officer as well as the chairman of the board. And most of this really has nothing to do with his role as chairman of the board. Really, it has to do with these tweets that he put out related to taking Tesla public and that he had funding secured. That's really what this is all about. It sounded like they hit him pretty hard. I think they came at him fairly aggressively. And in the end of it, he's going to cost him some money, which I'm sure doesn't sit right with him. But in the interest of moving on, I hope that's basically what happens. You just pay the fine and move on. So Elon Musk, as part of this deal, will continue as the CEO of Tesla, which is great. So you'll still have him at the helm as far as operations. I still believe that he would benefit from a chief operating officer as well. Nonetheless, there will be an opening for chairman of the board at Tesla. So if you are interested, you better get your CV tightened up, get that thing on fancy stationery and get it sent in if you are at all interested in taking that position. I would like to do that. I'm nowhere near qualified to do it, but boy, it would be a great job to have. In other interesting news, Elon has responded to several tweets related to delays in people receiving their Model 3s. And at one point responded to someone on Twitter saying that he apologized for the difficulty in logistics and said that part of the problem is they're having trouble getting enough trailers, car carriers, to get the cars out and around, and that they actually started building their own car carrier trailers. And I did see a picture online which reportedly was Tesla-built car trailers. Some of them were blue and some of them were red, and they were just packed to the gills, kind of going down the highway in a big convoy. So that was pretty exciting. Other big news in Tesla is version 9 of the software is expected soon. It's going to have several really nice updates. One of them, probably the biggest one, is an upgrade to enhanced autopilot. So my understanding is that you will get this feature. You do not need to have purchased full self-driving as an extra option to get this. And this was originally called Drive by Nav. I think it's called now turn or lane change or navigate. Something like that. I think it's called drive by navigation or something. But the gist of it is that the car will go from interstate, exit to interstate, and will join another interstate. So if you're, in Fargo, North Dakota, if you're going, west on 94 and you want to turn south on I-29, the car supposedly will do that if it's in your navigation that's where you're going. So that will be a great feature, assuming it works. So that should be rolling out soon. My understanding is that some people already have it in beta testing, and you may find some links or some videos as well online on YouTube or search on Twitter, and you may find some examples of that. It looks like it works pretty well. So that's pretty big news. My vehicle does not have the updated software on it yet. So I'll be kind of watching out for that myself as well. Now, before we get to this week's topic, which is Delivery Day for me, or D-Day, I guess, if you will, or as I was calling it in my house, National Tesla Day, I did just want to mention, this was a very difficult show. I appreciate the commitment. I appreciate everyone listening to the show. And, I'm just in awe of podcasters like some of the big guys like Ryan McCaffrey and Rob Maurer and Tesla Tidbits and those guys that just commit to the show. It really does take a lot of effort and a sacrifice of time, in particularly the last couple of days. Once I got the car home, that's all I wanted to do was drive the car and show it to people, and my family wanted to go for rides, and we'd find an excuse to go out and get ice cream or do something. So very difficult to find time, and then I had to go right back to work this weekend. So I worked all day today, 8 to about 5 or so, and then I go back to work again tomorrow morning. So my plan was to sort of record some clips. I'm going to try to do my best to kind of montage these together, and hopefully they'll make sense and just kind of give you a little bit of a flavor of what Delivery Day was like for me. All right, well, it is 5:25 in the morning, and I am in my rental car and headed out to Minneapolis. It is 39 degrees outside this morning, so winter is coming, and which is okay, and I'm glad I'm getting my car so that I'll have some time to drive around on dry roads before the snow comes. Again, fingers crossed. I don't think there's going to be any problems today, but you never know at this point. So let's see, I'm in a rental car. The rental car that I have, somewhat ironically, is a Ford Fusion hybrid. So at very low speeds, so when pulling out of the driveway, pulling out of my garage, it was all electric mode. So it was actually completely silent pulling out, which is actually the first time I've driven a hybrid. I've been in a Prius. I've never driven one, never driven a hybrid. I've never driven I've driven an electric, obviously, when I've rented a Tesla, but brain's still not working all that well since it's so early in the morning, but I'll keep posting some updates and hopefully can stitch these together to sort of have an audio walkthrough of what this day was like, and maybe try to share with you a little sense of what this adventure turns out to be for today. Hopefully things will go smoothly. Alright, so been driving for a little while. I'm probably about 20 minutes out. So I left Fargo, past Moorhead, into Minnesota now. Interesting that, this rental car that I have, it's different. So it's all the knobs, everything's foreign to me. So I don't know how to set the cruise control and exactly where the wipers are and how to work the climate controls and how to operate the radio. So it is interesting. The drive too is going to be sort of unfamiliar as far as the vehicle is concerned, and then I'm going to switch again and have another sort of unfamiliar experience on the way back, hopefully a good one, and hopefully with some autopilot. But so far, so good. Still very dark outside, not much traffic on the road at this point. So last night, as you can imagine, it was a little bit tough to sleep, and I had a dream about my delivery experience here, which was pretty vivid. So basically, I arrived at what was the Tesla place. It was kind of like a big warehouse. There must have been 50, 60 cars parked out in the parking lot. So I pulled up, went into the building, and it opened up, and it was kind of like just a very big open warehouse. And as I walked in, I just noticed there must have been maybe 500, 600 people in there. It's just a very large open warehouse. And there was an area where there was a line where people were lined up buying like coffee and tea and stuff like that, like a little mini Starbucks or something inside the warehouse. And then when you first walked in, there was this black car and I started looking at the paint on it. I was seeing if I could find paint imperfections or a chip in the paint, and I did find some, and I'm like, this is terrible. But then I like panned out my scope of vision, and it was an old like Ford Model T in black with some paint chips on it. So then I looked over to my right. Actually, I looked to my left, and there was like a bulletin board area, and they had this big giant digital bulletin board poster thing that was kind of changing these Tesla advertisements. And I tried to take a picture, but people kept kind of standing near it, and I couldn't get that. It was shining in a weird way with my phone. And then I looked off to my right, and there was just a big crowd of people, and it was almost like the airport queue, except at the end there were like little booths, like a ticket booth at a stadium or something like that, or Disneyland maybe. And then I got in, and everyone just started lining up single file in line. So I got in line, and we were way back in the line. There must have been, I don't know, it was probably 100 feet of line in front of me. And I didn't even really know what was going on. There weren't any like Tesla people or anyone official. It was just kind of like the crowd just started lining up. And I remember I was standing with a couple of people around me, and I just said to this guy standing next to me, I was like, this line's terrible. We're probably going to be pretty good friends by the time we get our cars because this line's going to take so long. And then shortly after that, this door off to the right opened up into a second warehouse. And the line just started pouring in. Like basically as fast as you could walk, the line started pouring into the other building, which opened up into this another huge warehouse, which almost seemed like I told my wife about the dream this morning. She said, it sounds like a Chevy commercial. So then I walked into this other warehouse, and there's this first open area, maybe about the size of half of a basketball court, that's kind of roped off. And then all around are all these Teslas parked. And as soon as people start walking in, they're like, that's my car. And they just started running towards their car. And I'm thinking, I don't know how they can tell which car's theirs, because mine's just black. And, I see a black car, but I see lots of black cars. I don't know where these people are going. So I just kind of stand there while all these people just start rushing like kids on Christmas Day towards their car. And then I woke up. So it turns out my alarm was going off, and my wife was kind of poking me to try to get me to wake up.
In a way that hurt investors. The possible penalty is very high. Here's Marketplace's Justin Ho.
Not only is the SEC suing Musk, but it also wants to ban him from serving as an officer or a director of any public company. And that's because the suit revolves around his actions, not Tesla's. And to be clear, the SEC isn't only mad about the tweet. It also calls out a blog post Musk posted a few days later, saying Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund had approached him about taking the company private. The SEC says that 420 figure wasn't based on any discussions with funders, and it says Musk chose it in part to impress his girlfriend, since 420 is a marijuana reference. Musk called the suit unjustified and says he acts in the best interest of shareholders.
Justin, thank you. U.S. stock index futures are all down 0.2%. We're watching it now.
So that's interesting.
Where interest rates there are up sharply.
So that clip we just listened to was NPR News. I believe it was BBC America, and I was just kind of scrolling through the stations, and of course Elon Musk's name comes up, and of course the infamous tweet now in the SEC suit or investigation or whatever you want to call it. That was the first time I heard that the 420 reference was intended to impress his girlfriend. Now, I don't know where they got that information, whether they got that from Elon or someone else. I have no idea. So, Elon is everywhere. I find it ironic that I hear that as I'm on my way to pick up the car. Now, as you know from listening to the podcast before, I definitely think that was a big mistake on his part and shouldn't have happened. But nonetheless, I still have confidence in the company, and I think if you were just listening to that, scrolling through the channel, you would be like my friend at work who's like, I think Elon's losing his mind, and I don't know if it's a safe investment. Obviously, I disagree with that, but I can understand why people would feel like that, given what's out there. I'm just going to break in here a little bit. It was just absolutely fascinating how much Elon Musk came up on the news just during the short amount of time that I was listening to talk radio during my drive.
Automaker Tesla, as NPR's Jasmine Garsd reports, it follows a comment from Elon Musk on social media.
On August 7th, Elon Musk tweeted that he was thinking of taking Tesla private at $420 a share. That sent Tesla stocks skyrocketing. Problem is, Musk didn't actually have any firm backers to go private. The SEC is now coming after Musk for allegedly misleading investors. The lawsuit seeks that Musk be barred from serving as an officer or director of a public company. In a statement following the lawsuit announcement, Elon Musk called the SEC's actions unjustified. He wrote, quote, "I've always taken action in the best interests of truth, transparency, and investors." Jasmine Garsd, NPR News, New York.
2 pilots were killed
Whoa.
and 2 passengers.
All right, so it is now 9 o'clock. I made it to the rental car return place Enterprise here in Hopkins, Minnesota. So next step is to return the car, make sure I don't leave anything in the car, and then grab an Uber and head over to Tesla. I don't think they officially open until 10, but they did say if I get there early, that's probably okay. I don't know how early that means, but the weather's certainly warmed up. It's 46 degrees now, so if I need to hang out outside or hang around like a hobo, that's fine, I suppose. I'll update you next. All right, and so what happened next was I got a ride over to the Tesla store, arrived and pulled up, and there's just a bunch of Model 3s kind of just out there on the road. There's car carriers around, there's staff everywhere. It's early, so it's about 9:30-ish when I get there, 9:40. I let them know. Somebody kind of walks me into the building. They have a nice lounge set up. The store actually looks quite a bit different than the last time I was there. They've basically completely remodeled it. There's a really nice kind of relaxing area. There's coffee. There's water bottles. There's some nice, sitting areas, that kind of thing. So people start going through my paperwork. I have to sign a couple of things. They look at a copy of my driver's license. I hand over the cashier's check from the bank for the financing portion of it. I had already done an ACH transfer online. That money had gone through as well. So very smoothly up to this point. I did say my appointment was at 10 o'clock, so I was fine to wait for 20 minutes or so. He said, your car is just going through the wash, so it'll be about 30 minutes, and then it should be ready. So interestingly, an interesting, very sort of eclectic group of people hanging out there. Really neat crowd. I did get to catch up with a listener in the podcast, and now hopefully you can call her a Tesla friend of mine. Destiny was there, and we got to meet up and chat for a bit, which was great. She got there after I did and still got her car before I did, which wasn't really fair in my opinion, but that's the way it worked out. All kidding aside, it's a great experience at the dealership itself. The guy that showed me the car was very knowledgeable, although he did skip a couple things. Like I had a question about how to get the charging area set up. There actually is a little cable there. I had brought my own, not realizing that was the case, and I was trying to hook up my own, and the one I brought was too short. So then he kind of had to come back in the car and said, just play around with it. If you have any questions, come and find me. So all that was fine. And then finally I was just ready to drive off, which was really a very... it was a surreal moment, just sitting in the car and then just leaving with it, like just heading home. It's mine now, and I'm just going to drive home. And then, of course, deathly afraid that I'm going to get in an accident at some point on my way home. So that was clearly in the forefront of my mind. So I was relatively careful driving out. I didn't really test the acceleration, at least for, I don't know, probably 10, 15 minutes before I started getting comfortable enough with the car to have a little bit of fun. All right, so right now I have the car, and I am sitting at the Tesla Supercharger in Clearwater, Minnesota, which is a great spot. I think I've mentioned it before on the podcast, but it's a great little bakery. I'm having a little Euro right now, drinking a soda, watching the news. Car is charging. Said it was going to take me about a half-hour charge. I picked up the car. It had about a 70% charge, so easily got me to Clearwater, no problem. Interesting note that... intelligent cruise control, smart cruise control, adaptive cruise control does work after the calibration period while you're driving, but you can't engage auto steer until you've put the car in park. So in other words, you got to stop somewhere and then turn it on in settings, and then you can use it after that. So I haven't used autopilot full just yet. I'll use it on the way home. So I got a sandwich, having a drink, got about 5 minutes left. Only problem I'm having so far is that my app has not paired to my car yet, so I can't actually check the charge status of my car remotely. So I just had set a timer, and now I'm having a little something to eat. Texted the kids, talked to my wife, and finish up lunch here and head home. Try not to make a mess in my car. So going good so far. All right, so now it is 2:14 in the afternoon. I'm driving home. Got a little bit of range anxiety going on. I did charge in Clearwater. Got up to about 80%. It said I would arrive home with about 10% charge. And then I headed out going kind of fast. Was doing about 75 to 80, somewhere in there. Speed limit here is 70. And the car told me I needed to slow down to less than 75 or I wasn't going to make it to my destination. So I slowed down, started drafting, got a little bit panicky. And it's vacillated a little bit between as low as 5% when I arrive home up to 12%. Right now it's at 7%, and I got about 55 miles to go. But so far, some first impressions. The car is great. It's hard to imagine with where my expectations were and with the amount of anticipation that I had that it could meet those expectations, but it really did. I would say the interior is so clean. It really is shocking. Like it doesn't blow you away with like flash or anything, and everything's very nice. And it's just very simple and very clean. The LCD, the screen, the touch screen is amazing. It's actually it looks at first like it might be intimidating, but it actually is very straightforward. It's really nice the way they set it up. The controls are excellent. The visibility is excellent. I'm completely used to having stuff off to the side. Every now and then I look down at the binnacle and there's nothing there, which is still a little bit weird, but I don't, I feel like I'm pretty well used to it. Other quick impressions, the music that you have in there, I think it's Slacker that comes with the car, is excellent. The sound quality is actually really good on Slacker. I don't know if it's coming in at a better bit streaming rate than when I was using my phone. It took me a little while to get my phone to link. I couldn't figure that out initially, how to do that. It turns out it's very simple, but I just didn't know where to click on that one. And then lastly, autopilot is outstanding. I just can't believe how accurate it is. Like, I really trust it. I can see how people would get too trusting with it, but it nags frequently. I get a nag every minute at least. Like, it's either 30 seconds or every minute. I don't think it's let me go longer than that without some kind of little nag, either a little blue message on the screen, then the top part of the screen starts to blink blue, and then it's actually beeped at me a couple of times. I've had two little braking events where it kind of tapped the brakes when I was going under an underpass, and I don't know if that's a shadow or something that's triggering it, but then it stops. It's just like a little tap of the brakes. That's happened a couple times. I've been on autopilot almost the whole way home now since Clearwater, and again, I got about 50 miles to go. I have been getting a lot of great feedback on Twitter, which has been great to see. It's a little bit unbelievable. I tweeted out that I'm still kind of in shock. It's just kind of weird that it's actually happened, and that I'm actually driving the car, and that I'm having some range anxiety, and that I'm on autopilot, and it's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I texted my daughter, I texted my kids, I texted my wife, talked to everyone, and they're all just dying. My kids are like, you got to pick me up as when you get home from school. Just let me know. They want me to come pull up in a Tesla so they can jump in, which I guess is fine. But great drive. I'm driving a little slower than I normally would to save battery so that I can make it home. If I was in a gas car, I'd probably be doing 75, 80, maybe even a little faster than that, depending on what everyone else is doing. So it's taking me a little bit longer for sure. The lunch stop in Clearwater was no problem. It was, relaxing, and it didn't felt like I had to wait, like I took extra time. I did get in the car And when I sat down and I looked at the charging and it said I'd arrive at 10%, and I was like, it's good enough, I'll just go. And then I kind of regretted that after, a few minutes when I got out and it started to tell me I had to slow down. So I just have to factor that in next time, that if you're going to drive fast, you need more juice. So just keep that in mind next time. It's fun to drive fast, but there is a range penalty for driving faster and being more aggressive, which I knew, I guess, but when you experience it, it's different for sure. And then just a couple other cool things. It was nice. I got to meet Destiny, who is a listener of the podcast, and we've been sort of communicating, and actually realized that we were going to be arriving, both of us from North Dakota, her from way out west at Dickinson, and then myself from Fargo. We're both going to be arriving at the same store in Eden Prairie at 10 a.m. For 10 a.m. appointments to pick up our cars, which was really neat. And actually, I got there first, and then I did see her there, and she walked in. I thought it was her based on her picture, and then I heard someone greet her from Tesla, and she said her name was Destiny, and then we talked for a few minutes, which was really nice to meet her. Very nice person, and have some things in common. She's a NICU nurse, and I'm an ER doc, so we have some commonality there in healthcare, as I do an autopilot lane change here. The autopilot lane changes are great. It feels very much like you would do it. It's just very natural feeling. But anyway, I had a great time, and then I also got a chance to talk. There were, I think, 2 or 3 volunteers, Tesla owners, that were at the store that were helping the staff there, and I got to talking to one of them. I believe his name was Carl, and we chatted for a while. I had about a 15-minute delay between when my car was washed and when they had it sort of ready to go for me. And so he told me, a lot of really nice guy, great information. Is actually an original Tesla Roadster owner, and he told me the story about how he, is very much into EVs, and he very much wanted to get off of gasoline and do all that stuff for the environment, which is great. And he had saw, this was back in I think he said 2005, something like that, 2008, when Tesla, I think, incorporated around 2005, and then the Roadster came out, and there was an event near where he lives, outside of the cities, where you could come and see the Tesla Roadster. And he had told his wife he was thinking about getting one. At the time, I think it was a $140,000 vehicle. And his wife said, sure, we can go look at it, but you're not getting one. Just forget it. So he's like, that's fine. I just want to go see it. So they went to go see it. And the, person that was showing the car for Tesla asked if they wanted to take a test drive. And they said they kind of wanted to do it together. And the salesperson was like, that's fine. You guys just take it out and just, bring it back when you're done. So they let them drive around a $140,000 Tesla Roadster, first edition. And his wife actually drove. And then when he got back, his wife punched it a few times. I think she's more of a car performance guy than he is. He was more into the EV part of it. And so she punched it a few times. And then they got back. The Tesla salesperson was like, we're running a very special deal right now on a special lease program. What do you think? And then she's like, yeah, okay. So the wife basically told him that he had permission to buy it, which I don't know if that was secretly his plan all along, but that's the way it worked out. So we talked about range penalty related to the cold weather, and he said that there is definitely a penalty there, particularly if you're going someplace and then you stop and you leave the car more than a half an hour in sub-zero temperatures so the battery has time to cool off again. As long as you're moving quickly enough and you're only stopping for short periods of time, and the battery doesn't have time to really cool off, then there's only that initial range penalty when you charge the battery. So it's not just so much that it's cold, but it's that you have to charge the battery up to temperature, so you have to use some electrons to get the battery pack warm. But if you keep the battery pack warm, then essentially the range penalty disappears from that point on, because it's generating heat just by being used. So that was kind of good information. So it's great to talk to him. And like I said, there was a few volunteers there, even in Minneapolis, and the staff apparently delivered 50 Teslas that day. Most of them, I'm sure, were Model 3s. Almost every car I saw getting delivered was a Model 3. and there was just a nice eclectic mix of people. Some younger people, mostly middle-aged folks like myself, a couple people maybe a little bit older, some snappy dressers, people that I would describe as more typical like Tesla people, maybe the Model X and Model S crowd, and that have maybe a little bit more, more well-to-do than the rest of us. I'm not saying that I'm not, and certainly just being able to afford one of these cars is a great luxury, and I do appreciate that. But it's great. I'm driving down the highway. Here comes another auto lane change. Listening to music. Everything's going great. So I should be home around a little after 3, and see what the reception is like when I get home from the family. All right, so we are back now to live in the studio at beautiful Funk Studios, of course. So the reception when I got home, I stopped recording. Things were really kind of a blur, and that's why it's just been so busy since I got the car, from the drive home to, having to charge it when I got home. So basically I got home, my daughter was texting me. It's kind of right around the time when she was done with school, and she asked, just as I was passing the school, actually, just after I got past it, she asked if I could come and pick her up in the car, which originally I had said I would do if I was able to. So I kind of turned around, and then my wife texted me right after that, and she's like, I thought you were going to be home by now. So she kind of tracked my location using the phone, I believe, and saw that I was at the school waiting for her, and she wasn't ready to come out yet. And turns out the 2 little guys, Evan and Parker, were actually waiting in the driveway for me to come home. So I basically got out of there, headed home since only a few minutes away. I come home, they're standing in the driveway, excited, jumping up and down, going crazy. So they got to sit in it, and then we all kind of got in the car and went and picked up my daughter at school, and then drove her around, and everyone was just kind of going bananas. It was fun. And interestingly, one thing I could tell you with absolute certainty, kids love Teslas. So I'm driving to my daughter's middle school, and as soon as there's a crowd out there, because it's kind of pickup time, and there's some kids, and this boy who's in middle school sees the car, mouth opens wide, he's staring, then he starts pointing, and I can tell just by lip reading, he's like, it's a Tesla, and he keeps saying it over and over again, and then everyone's just kind of staring as we drive around. It was absolutely amazing. I felt like it's similar for you dog owners out there. It's similar to walking around with a puppy. You just get so much attention that really has nothing to do with you, but you almost feel like you're hanging out with someone famous, but it's not really you. So that's kind of what that experience was like. Just a absolute blur. I had to plug in the car when I got home. I had about 5 or 6% on the battery, so I had to plug it in, and I used my wall connector for that. Got it up to about 15% or so. Then I took my my number 2, Trevor, had studied really hard for a series of tests for, I believe it's his AP science class. I think it might be physics. I don't know exactly. But he actually stayed home last night, studied very hard for this test, and then turns out most of the material that they were given, there was 5 questions out of this huge test, and the rest of it was all on material that they spent literally one class day on. And he was just super mad. He said, everyone did poorly, and he was upset with himself. And so I took him out for a ride by himself. And I'll tell you what, as soon as I put the pedal down and we had that whoosh, I mean, everyone's reaction is the same, and Trevor's was the same. He just started laughing. His reaction is oh, and then his arm sort of comes up, and you just feel that in your stomach. And then it's basically just smiling after that. I mean, it really, that little burst of adrenaline and dopamine that you get when you do that really made a difference there. So, I was happy that he kind of got a smile on his face and kind of got to forget about, his very horrible day at high school. After that, we didn't really do too much. Had my nephew, Eric, was over at the house, so he sat in the car and kind of looked at it and oohed and awed about it. The neighbors came over. My neighbor on the one side came over and was like, oh my God, what did you do? Because we really didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but so we got some attention there. We're not really big on attention, but it was still pretty cool, and I'm obviously pretty proud of having the car and just being a part of the Tesla community is well worth whatever trade-offs we get as far as like excess attention and that sort of thing. So just, wow, I mean, just a whirlwind week. Bottom line, I just could not be more happy with my purchase. You know, the trials and tribulations of the scheduling and the delivery and the inaccurate information, all of that's forgotten. I just could not be more excited. I went to work early, went to the gym afterwards, had a little extra time. So I just kind of drove around a little bit before heading into work, just for fun. I took my brother and his wife out for a little drive tonight, and everyone's reaction is the same. As soon as you punch it, they're like, whoa. And the fact that it's so silent, it's like a spaceship. It really is amazing. And it's something that is, obviously it's a cliche, but it is something that you have to experience to really get it. And that's Tesla's secret weapon, in my opinion. You know, there's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of things going around. I've seen it 100 times on Twitter. You have to ride in the car. You have to try it for yourself to truly understand what the product is. And I have this very strong belief that the product is first. The product here is absolutely compelling. It's an expensive car, but I still feel like I paid a fair price, like that I got value, that for what I paid, for what my expectations were, for the way they present the car, that they absolutely delivered. So thank you, all of you, for listening. It's been very gratifying to go through this week. It's been great to see the podcast grow in listenership. That really means a lot to me, and it really makes me feel good about what I'm doing. So I can't say enough of a thank you to all of you for listening and supporting the show. As usual, I'd love to hear from you. Email is teslanewstopics@gmail.com. I am on Twitter @teslanewstopics. Music for the show is provided by Melodious Thunk. My referral code is available at ts.la/Jeff62003. After feedback from listeners, I have submitted to TuneIn, so please drop me a line when it shows up. I did check it in my car, and it had not showed up yet. Thank you so much for listening. If you feel like supporting the show in any way, by listening or by leaving a review on iTunes, I would appreciate it. Also, you can check us out on patreon.com/teslanewstopics. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And with that, let's wrap it up. I will talk to you all next week.